Daniel fell quiet. His fear of the trial remained, but his anger at her lessened. She was not the one forcing him. She was caught in the same net of tradition, bound by rules as old as the stars above them. For a long while, they sat in silence. Then Sira began to tell stories. She spoke of her youth when the city's towers were not yet built, when her people still lived in caves of crystal. She told of great migrations, of wars fought and peace earned. She spoke of her family long gone now and the friends she had buried. Her voice carried pain but also wisdom, and Daniel listened. Against his will, he found himself drawn to her words. Each story painted her not as a symbol of tradition, but as a living bridge between the past and the present. Hours slipped by. Outside, the moons moved across the sky, casting shifting shadows through the chamber's window. Finally, Daniel asked, "Why do your people hold this tradition so tightly? Why does carrying a burden mean a vow?" Sira looked into the faint light, her expression distant. "Because to carry another's burden is to promise more than strength. It is to share their life. Long ago, in times of famine, in times of war, those who carried another's weight often saved them. To our ancestors, that was love, and love became vow." Daniel nodded slowly. For the first time, he understood the meaning, even if he could not accept it for himself. The chamber grew quiet again. Daniel shifted, staring at the floor. "I don't hate you, Sira. I can't give myself to something I didn't choose." Her lips curved into a faint smile. "Then perhaps the trial is a gift. It gives you a path to choose. Win and you are free. Lose and you walk with me. Either way, the stars decide, not anger, not war." Daniel looked at her carefully. She was not a trap. She was not a villain. She was a woman clinging to hope in the only way her people knew. The guards outside shifted as dawn neared. The first pale light touched the horizon. The sound of drums began again in the distance, slow and heavy, calling the city to gather. Sira rose slowly, her robe glowing faintly in the crystal light. "It is time," she said. "Whatever happens, Daniel, I thank you. For your kindness, for your honesty, for reminding me that even a small act can change a life." Daniel stood, his legs unsteady. His fear of the trial had not faded, but now it was mixed with something else, a strange respect for the elder woman he had once seen only as a burden. As the guards opened the door, Daniel whispered to himself, "I will face it, not just for me, but for her, for all of us." The drums grew louder. The city awoke. And Daniel walked toward the trial, carrying not only his fate, but the weight of two worlds. The city square was alive again, but this time it was not celebration. It was judgment. Thousands of aliens filled the open space, their silver eyes glowing as the twin suns rose slowly over the horizon. The air carried the low hum of drums, each beat like a heartbeat of the world. Daniel stood at the center, his hands clenched, his heart racing. The veil of unity still hung between the tall pillars, glowing faintly. But now it was only a shadow behind him. Today was not about vows. Today was about survival. The High Seer raised his silver staff and the crowd fell silent. His voice thundered across the square. "The human Daniel has refused the vow. By law, he must face the trial of burdens. If he triumphs, he is free. If he fails, the union stands and his life belongs to Elder Sira." Aliens cheered. Humans stood stiff at the edge of the square, their faces tight with anger and worry. Captain Harris glared at Daniel as if to say, "Don't you dare lose." Daniel swallowed hard. He wished this were just a nightmare, but the drums, the heat, the thousands of eyes, they were all too real. Two guards dragged forward a massive stone frame. Within it, glowing orbs floated like fire, shifting in color. Daniel frowned, confused. The High Seer explained, "The trial is simple. You must carry the orbs of burden across the path of silence. If you drop them, if you fall, you fail. Only those with strength of body and spirit succeed." The crowd roared again. Daniel's stomach twisted. Strength of body, spirit? He had no idea what that meant in alien terms. The guards lifted the first orb and placed it in Daniel's arms. It was heavier than it looked, pressing into his chest like solid iron. His knees bent under the weight. Then another orb, and another. Soon his arms shook, his back straining. The guard stepped aside, leaving him with the impossible load. The seer pointed to a narrow bridge that stretched across the square, high above the ground. Beneath it, glowing mist swirled like a living sea. Daniel stared at it, his throat dry. "You've got to be kidding me." The drums began again, steady and slow. The trial had begun. Daniel took the first step onto the bridge. His arms trembled, the orbs threatening to slip. The bridge was thin, barely wide enough for his feet, and every movement sent it swaying. The crowd watched in silence, thousands of eyes fixed on him. Step by step, he moved forward. His muscles burned, sweat dripping down his face. The orbs pressed heavier with every step, as though feeding on his fear. Halfway across, his leg slipped. The bridge shook violently. The crowd gasped. Daniel bit down hard, steadying himself. The orbs nearly fell, but he tightened his grip, groaning with effort. His chest screamed for air. His arms shook like they would break. He wanted to stop, to drop everything, but he remembered Sira's words. To carry another's burden is to share their life. He thought of her lonely eyes, her trembling voice. He thought of the humans watching, their hope that he would resist. He thought of the fragile peace between two species, and then something inside him shifted. He realized this trial was not about strength alone. It was about meaning. If he carried these orbs for himself, he would fail. But if he carried them for others, for Sira, for his people, for peace, then maybe he could endure. Daniel gritted his teeth and pushed forward, one step at a time. The bridge swayed, the orbs glowed hotter. His body screamed, but he kept going. Finally, after what felt like forever, he stepped onto the far side. The crowd erupted, half in shock, half in awe. Humans cheered wildly. Aliens stared, whispering in disbelief. The High Seer struck his staff once. The trial is complete. The human has carried the burden. He has earned freedom. The aliens roared, some angry, some astonished. The humans shouted with relief. Daniel collapsed to his knees, dropping the orbs. His arms burned, his lungs heaved, but he was alive, and he had won. Elder Sira stepped forward, her silver eyes shining with both pride and sorrow. She knelt beside him, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. You carried more than stone today. You carried hearts. You carried hope. I wished for a bond, but I see now you were never mine to hold. Daniel looked at her, exhausted but sincere. I didn't want this, Sira, but I respect you. And I'll remember you, always. The crowd quieted as the two locked eyes. For a moment, alien and human were not enemies, not strangers, but simply two souls who had shared a burden neither had chosen. The High Seer lowered his staff slowly. The vow is broken. The human is free. The humans erupted in cheers. The aliens bowed their heads in respect, even if some looked bitter. The trial had spoken, and their law was satisfied. Daniel stood shakily, his body aching but his spirit steady. He had not chosen this path, but he had walked it. And in doing so, he had proven something greater than refusal or acceptance. He had proven what it meant to be human. As the suns rose higher, lighting the city in gold, Daniel whispered to himself, sometimes, the heaviest burdens aren't what we carry in our hands. They're what we carry in our hearts, and with that, his story, of kindness, of conflict, of survival, would be told by both humans and aliens for generations to come. Daniel's heart pounded louder than the drums. The seer's voice rose. Speak the words of binding. Promise to carry her burdens until the stars fade. The crowd held its breath. Daniel opened his mouth, but no sound came. His tongue felt heavy, his throat tight. He could feel the weight of two worlds pressing on him. The silence stretched. The aliens shifted nervously. The humans grew tense. The air itself seemed to wait. Finally, Daniel whispered, I can't. Gasps exploded through the square. The aliens cried out in shock. Some shouted in anger, others in sorrow. The humans stirred, ready for conflict. The guards raised their staffs, stepping closer. Sira's face fell. Her silver eyes dimmed and her smile faded. She whispered one word, full of pain. Why? Daniel's chest ached at the sight of her sadness. Because it isn't real, he said softly. Not to me. I can't give you a vow that isn't mine. The square roared with chaos. The seer struck his staff, the sound like thunder. Dishonor. The human brings dishonor, aliens shouted. Humans shouted back. The drums stopped, replaced by the clash of angry voices. Daniel stood frozen, caught in the storm he had unleashed. In that moment, he realized this was no longer about him and Sira. This was about all of them. One act of kindness had turned into a battle of pride, of culture, of survival. And as the crowd roared, Daniel knew his fight had only begun. The great square shook with noise. Aliens shouted in their deep voices, silver eyes flashing with anger. Humans yelled back, their fists tight, their faces red with frustration. The air was hot with rage, the night filled with chaos. Daniel stood beneath the glowing veil, his body stiff, his heart pounding like a war drum. He had refused the vow, and now both sides were exploding around him. The High Seer raised his staff, his voice booming. The human insults us. He breaks a sacred promise. His dishonor poisons the bond between our peoples. Aliens roared in agreement. Some pounded their fists against the stone ground. Others raised their arms to the moons, crying out for judgment. Captain Harris stepped forward from the human crowd, his voice sharp like steel. Enough, Daniel never made a promise. You twisted his kindness into a trap. If you call that honor, then your honor is nothing but chains. The humans cheered at his words, their anger boiling over. Some reached for their weapons, though Harris signaled them to hold. He knew one spark could ignite war. The Seer's silver mask glowed in the moonlight. You do not understand our ways, Captain. You speak of freedom, but freedom without respect is chaos. The human chose to act. His act sealed his fate. Choice, Harris barked. He had no choice. He only carried bags for an elder. That's not a vow. That's decency. And you want to twist it into marriage? Gasps rippled through the aliens. To them, Harris's words were like spitting on their ancestors. Angry shouts rose again. Daniel felt the weight crushing him. He wanted to shout too, to tell both sides to stop. But his voice would drown in the storm. Then Elder Sira stepped forward. She raised her frail hands, her voice softer but somehow stronger than the noise around her. Listen, she cried. Listen to me. The square grew quieter. Even the drums in the distance faded. Her silver eyes shone with tears as she looked first at the aliens. Do not turn this into rage. This young one's heart was pure. He did not know our ways. His kindness was innocent. Then she turned to the humans. And you do not think us monsters. We are not thieves of freedom. We are keepers of tradition. What he did means something to us. More than you can understand. Her words struck both sides like a slow wave. The shouting eased, but the tension hung heavy in the air. Daniel stepped forward, his voice shaking but clear. I didn't mean to insult anyone. I respect your traditions, but where I come from, a promise must be spoken. It must be chosen. If I stay silent and you force me, then it is not a vow. It is a prison. The humans nodded, their eyes burning with agreement. The aliens muttered, torn between anger and doubt. The High Seer raised his staff again. And if you refuse, human? What then? Will you spit on our ways? Will you cast aside Elder Sira before all our people? Daniel's stomach tightened. Every word was a trap. If he said yes, he lost his freedom. If he said no, he became the enemy of an entire world. Captain Harris spoke again, his tone firm. If you force this, you risk more than dishonor. You risk war. Is that what you want? The aliens gasped, their voices trembling. War was a word no one wanted to hear. The seer lowered his staff slowly. His voice was quieter now, but it carried a sharper edge. Perhaps the human must prove himself. If he claims his heart is free, let him show it in trial. Let him face our test. If he succeeds, the vow is broken. If he fails, the union stands. The crowd erupted again. Some cheered, some shouted in protest. Humans looked at each other with uncertainty. Daniel blinked, his breath catching. A trial? Sira's face tightened with worry. She whispered to him, The trial is harsh, few pass. They will test your spirit, your strength, your truth. The seer's silver mask gleamed. Yes, a trial of burdens. You carried the elder's weight. Now you must carry the weight of your words. Tomorrow, when the suns rise, the trial will decide your fate. Daniel's knees almost buckled. A trial against what? Against who? The humans argued loudly. Some demanded they refuse. Others feared the aliens' wrath if they rejected the challenge. The aliens, on the other hand, seemed satisfied. To them, the trial was fair. It honored tradition while giving the human a chance to prove himself. Captain Harris pulled Daniel aside briefly. His voice was low, urgent. They're playing with you. This trial, whatever it is, it won't be easy. But if you win, you walk free. If you lose, they'll chain you to that vow forever. Daniel stared at him, his mind racing. He had never wanted this. He had never asked for any of it. And yet the weight of two civilizations now pressed down on his shoulders. Sira touched his arm once more. Her voice was soft, filled with sorrow. I do not wish you pain. But if you run, they will hunt you. If you fight, perhaps you will earn respect. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment. He thought of Earth, of the human colony, of the fragile peace that brought them here. One wrong choice could shatter it all. When he opened his eyes, he spoke with quiet strength. Then I will face the trial. The crowd exploded. Aliens cheered, stamping the ground. Humans shouted in protest, but also in awe. The decision was made. The High Seer raised his staff high, the moons gleaming behind him. So be it. At sunrise, the human will face the trial of burdens. His fate and the bond will be decided by the stars. Daniel stood in the middle of the square, the chants of thousands echoing in his ears. He had chosen, but not freely. And as the night wore on, he wondered, would this trial save him or destroy him? The alien city was quieter now. The drums had faded, the chanting stopped. Yet the tension remained heavy in the air like a storm waiting to break. Daniel sat inside a stone chamber, guarded by 2 aliens at the door. A single crystal on the wall glowed faintly, casting silver light across his tired face. Sleep would not come. His mind raced with fear of the trial at sunrise. What would it be? A test of strength, a battle, a puzzle of alien law? No one had explained. All he knew was failure meant a vow he never wanted, a life tied to someone he hardly knew. The door creaked open. Elder Sira entered, moving slowly, her robe dragging across the floor. The guards did not stop her. She carried a small bowl of warm liquid, steam rising from it. "You have not eaten," she said softly. "Drink, it will calm you." Daniel looked at the bowl, then at her. He hesitated, but finally took it. The liquid tasted strange, sweet at first, then bitter. It warmed his chest, easing the tightness in his stomach. Sira sat across from him, folding her frail hands. For a while, neither spoke. The silence stretched, broken only by the faint hum of the crystal walls. At last, Sira spoke. "You think me your enemy. You think I wish to trap you?" Daniel sighed. "I don't think you're my enemy. But this marriage vow, whatever it is, it's not my choice. I don't want to be forced." Sira's silver eyes lowered. "I understand more than you believe. I was once like you, young, proud, sure of what freedom meant. But freedom fades when you grow old. Loneliness grows heavy. Tradition becomes the only rope that holds you from falling into the dark." Her voice trembled, not with weakness, but with truth. Daniel stared at her. For the first time, he saw not a stranger, not a symbol, but a person, an elder who had carried her own burdens for too long. Sira smiled faintly, though sadness touched her lips. "When you lifted my bags, I felt something I had not felt in years. Being seen, being cared for. To you, it was small. To me, it was the world." Daniel's chest ached. He wanted to argue, to remind her it was just an accident of culture. But the way her voice cracked, the way her hands shook slightly as she spoke, held him silent. He leaned back against the wall, his voice softer. "Where I come from, helping someone doesn't mean forever. But I didn't mean to disrespect you. I didn't mean to give hope where I couldn't keep it." Sira's eyes glistened, but she nodded slowly. "Your words are honest. That is more than many give. Perhaps honesty is the truest vow." The colony marketplace was alive with strange sounds and glowing colors. Tall alien buildings bent into the sky, their lights blinking like stars. Humans had only been here for a short time, trying to trade and learn from the native people. Most humans kept to themselves, nervous of making mistakes in this new world. But one young human, Daniel, liked to walk the market streets. He was curious, always watching, always listening. He did not know the alien language fully, but he understood enough to buy food, tools, and sometimes shiny trinkets. On this day, something unusual caught his eye. Near the edge of the market, an old alien woman struggled with heavy bags. She was short and frail compared to others of her kind. The bags were stuffed with fruit, metal, and strange glowing objects. The straps cut into her thin arms and she almost fell under the weight. Daniel stopped. He had been raised to help those in need. To him, kindness was simple. Without thinking, he rushed forward. "Let me help you, ma'am," he said, though he was unsure if she understood. The alien woman looked up, surprised. Her eyes were large and silver, reflecting the lights around them. She spoke a few words in her own tongue, then smiled faintly. Daniel bent down, picked up 2 of her bags, and steadied her with one hand. To him, this was nothing. A small act. A moment of humanity. But to the aliens watching, it was not small at all. Whispers spread through the market. Sharp voices echoed in the air. Alien merchants paused in their sales. Guards stopped in their patrol and children pointed at Daniel. The old woman seemed calm, but the crowd around them grew louder. Daniel frowned. "What's wrong?" "I'm only helping." He tried to ignore the stares, but the whispers turned into gasps. Some aliens bowed their heads, others clapped softly, and a few shouted words he did not understand. When he and the woman reached a shaded bench, she placed her hand gently on his arm and spoke again in her slow, trembling voice. He nodded politely, though he understood only pieces. Suddenly, 2 alien guards in silver armor marched forward. Their faces were stern, their steps heavy. They blocked Daniel's path and raised their staffs. Daniel froze. Is there a problem?" One guard barked words at him, then pointed at the bags in his hands. The other gestured toward the old woman, then at Daniel's chest. The young man's heart pounded. He didn't know what crime he had committed. Helping an elder wasn't illegal. Was it? The crowd pressed closer. Some aliens cheered, others murmured in disbelief. Daniel saw one alien laugh, another cry, and another bow as if witnessing a holy act. The guard spoke again, slower this time, and Daniel finally caught a phrase in broken human speech. "You vow to care." Daniel blinked. "What? No. I just carried her bags." The guards did not move. The old woman touched his arm again, smiling warmly, as if she accepted something he had promised. Daniel looked around, confused and nervous. The marketplace was no longer friendly. Every alien eye was on him. The humans nearby watched too, whispering nervously among themselves. A simple choice, a simple kindness, had turned into something larger. The guards motioned for him to follow. Daniel hesitated. His human friends shook their heads, warning him not to resist. Reluctantly, he walked with the guards, the old woman by his side. The crowd followed, chanting words he could not understand. Some threw flower petals at his feet. Others raised their hands as if praising him. Daniel whispered to himself, "What is going on? Why are they looking at me like that?" The guards led him through the market and toward the tall crystal tower at the center of the colony. The closer they came, the louder the crowd grew. Daniel's steps grew heavy with dread. He thought back to his simple action. He had only seen an old woman struggling. He had only wanted to help. But now, it felt like he had stepped into a trap, one made of traditions he did not know. Inside the crystal tower, the doors closed behind him with a deep, echoing sound. The air was cooler, filled with strange scents and glowing lights. Alien figures in long robes stood waiting, their faces serious. Daniel's breath quickened. He realized he was not just helping someone with groceries. He was standing in the middle of something sacred, something dangerous, and something he could not yet understand. The old woman beside him bowed to the robed figures, then pointed at Daniel with pride. The leader stepped forward, speaking slowly with a voice that shook the room. "You have made the vow." Daniel's eyes widened. His voice cracked as he whispered, "What vow?" The robed aliens only stared, their eyes glowing in the dim light. And at that moment, Daniel understood one thing clearly. His life was no longer his own. The crystal hall was wide and bright, glowing with colors that seemed to move across the walls like flowing water. Alien guards stood on both sides, their tall staffs glowing at the tips. In the center, the council of robed elders watched Daniel closely, their eyes shining silver in the dim light. Daniel felt small under their gaze. He had been in tough situations before, but nothing like this. His chest tightened as the silence dragged on. The old alien woman stood proudly beside him, her hands folded, her silver eyes soft with what looked like happiness. Then, the murmurs began. From the balcony above, dozens of aliens whispered, their voices mixing into a storm of sound. Daniel could not understand most of the words, but he caught one repeated over and over. Bonded, bonded, bonded. The council leader raised one hand, and the hall fell silent. His voice was deep and slow, the words heavy with meaning. Human Daniel, you have given your vow of care. You are joined now to Elder Sira. Daniel's heart almost stopped. He stared at the elder woman, Sira. She smiled gently, almost lovingly, as though she believed every word. No, 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 Daniel muttered. This is a mistake. I didn't vow anything. I just carried her bags. His words echoed, but the council only tilted their heads as if confused by his denial. One elder leaned forward, speaking in a softer tone. In our way, helping an elder carry her burdens is not small. It is sacred. You lifted her weight. Now by tradition, you lift her life. The hall erupted in cheers. Aliens clapped their long hands, some bowing, others raising their arms in praise. Daniel's ears buzzed with the noise. This can't be happening, he whispered. The guards stepped closer, their staffs glowing brighter. Daniel raised his hands quickly, showing he meant no harm. I didn't mean to insult anyone, he said firmly, his voice shaking. But I can't be married. I can't be joined to someone I don't even know. The aliens gasped. Some shouted angrily. To them, his words sounded like rejection, not of the woman, but of their entire culture. Sira touched his arm softly, her hand warm, her smile calm. Do not fear, she said, her voice trembling with age but filled with trust. You will understand. You will see honor in this. Daniel pulled back slightly, his mind spinning. Honor? To him this was madness. The council leader struck the floor with his staff and the sound boomed like thunder. Silence, he commanded. The crowd fell quiet again. He turned his glowing eyes toward Daniel. Human, your people are new here. You do not know our laws, but our laws are older than your stars. They cannot be broken. Daniel swallowed hard. His throat felt dry. He wanted to argue, to shout, to run. But he also knew the danger of disrespect. One wrong move could start a fire between humans and aliens. The hall doors opened suddenly and a group of human settlers rushed in. They were led by Captain Harris, a tall man with sharp eyes. He had heard the rumors spreading through the colony and had come to see for himself. What is the meaning of this? Harris demanded, his voice firm. The aliens murmured again, uneasy at the human captain's presence. Daniel felt a flicker of hope. Maybe Harris could explain. Maybe he could free him. But the council leader only bowed slightly. Your man has made the vow. He belongs now to Elder Sira. This is sealed. Harris's face hardened. He turned to Daniel. What did you do? Daniel threw his hands up helplessly. I carried her bags. That's all. The humans behind Harris whispered in alarm. Some cursed under their breath. To them this was outrageous. An innocent act turned into a trap. This is insane, Harris said coldly. You can't just force our people into your traditions. The aliens stiffened, their silver eyes narrowing. The leader raised his staff again. We do not force. He chose, he acted. The vow is done. The hall trembled with tension. Humans and aliens glared at each other, their words sharp, their tempers rising. Daniel stood frozen between the two sides, his heart racing. He felt like a rope pulled in two directions about to snap. He looked at Sira again. She did not seem angry or threatening. She looked peaceful. To her, this was not a trap. To her, this was destiny. The council leader's voice cut through the air once more. There will be ceremony. Tonight. The bond must be sealed. Daniel's stomach dropped. Ceremony? Tonight? Harris stepped forward, his fists clenched. This will not stand. The guards blocked his path, their staffs glowing like fire. The humans behind Harris reached for their weapons, but Harris lifted his hand, stopping them. He knew one wrong move could lead to bloodshed. Daniel whispered to himself, What have I gotten into? The council leader turned back to the crowd. It is decided. The human has chosen. The union is sacred. It will be honored. The hall thundered with applause and chants. The aliens celebrated, but the humans were silent, their faces pale with shock and anger. Daniel felt the weight of 1,000 eyes on him. He had tried to do something good, something simple. But now, he was trapped in a story much bigger than himself. And as the council declared the ceremony, Daniel realized with dread, his nightmare had only just begun. The sun of the alien world dipped low, painting the sky in shades of green and gold. From the crystal tower, Daniel was led through winding halls into a chamber filled with glowing symbols carved into the walls. The air hummed softly, as though the stone itself was alive. 2 guards stayed close, their staffs always glowing, ready to strike if he tried to resist. Elder Sira walked beside him with steady steps, her frail body moving as though this was the happiest day of her life. To Daniel, it felt like walking into a trap he could not escape. At the far end of the chamber sat the alien High Seer, a figure wrapped in long robes, his face hidden behind a mask of polished silver. When he spoke, his voice echoed as though the walls themselves carried his words. Human Daniel, you have stepped into the sacred vow. By our law, you must complete the binding. Refusal would break harmony. Refusal would bring dishonor. Daniel clenched his fists. He wanted to scream, to tell them again that it was all a mistake. But he looked at the guards, at their glowing staffs, and at the silent-robed elders around him. He knew shouting would not save him. Instead, he forced his voice to stay calm. I respect your people, but I did not vow. In my world, carrying bags does not mean marriage. It means helping someone who needed it. Nothing more. The High Seer tilted his head slowly. In our world, actions speak louder than words. Your act was a vow. It cannot be undone. The words hit Daniel like a heavy stone. He felt his chest tighten. How could he fight something built on belief? Something older than human history on this planet? The High Seer raised one hand, and attendants brought forward a glowing cloth embroidered with alien symbols. They stretched it between two pillars in the chamber, letting it shine in the dim light. This is the veil of unity, the seer declared. Tonight, when the moons rise, you will stand with Elder Sira beneath the veil. The vow will be sealed. Then your spirits, your fates, will walk together until the end. The crowd of aliens murmured with joy. For them, this was a holy moment. Daniel felt trapped. The words, "until the end," rang in his head like a bell he could not silence. He stepped back, shaking his head. No, this is wrong. You can't just force me into this. The aliens gasped loudly, their eyes flashing with anger. To them, his words were more than refusal. They were an insult to their entire way of life. One elder slammed his staff against the floor. You shame us with your rejection. You shame Elder Sira. Daniel turned to Sira. She looked at him, not with anger, but with sorrow. Her silver eyes shimmered as though holding back tears. Young one, she whispered softly. You do not see. You think you are trapped, but you are chosen. Do you know how long I have walked alone? Do you know what it means to be honored in my last days? Her words pierced him. For the first time, Daniel saw beyond the tradition. He saw the old woman's loneliness, her fragile hope. She did not see this as a prison. She saw it as salvation, but that did not make his fear fade. The High Seer spoke again, his voice like thunder. It is not only for Elder Sira, it is for peace between our peoples. A human joining with one of us is a symbol of unity. This vow will be remembered for centuries. Daniel froze. His act of kindness had turned into politics. He was no longer just a man, he was a symbol. The weight of it crushed him. If he refused, he would not only break Sira's heart, but also risk a rift between humans and aliens. If he agreed, he would lose his freedom, tied forever to a vow he never chose. The chamber door opened suddenly. Captain Harris stormed in again, his face dark with fury. This is madness, he growled. Daniel is under my command. He does not belong to your traditions. The guard stepped forward, blocking him. The High Seer lifted a hand calmly. You misunderstand, Captain. This union does not belong to one man. It belongs to history, to both our peoples. Harris's fists clenched. His voice shook with rage. History will mean nothing if this ends in blood. Daniel's heart raced. He saw both sides burning with pride, unwilling to bend. Humans ready to fight, aliens ready to defend, and he was the spark in the middle of the fire. The High Seer's voice thundered again. The ceremony will be held tonight. If the human refuses, then the dishonor will be upon him and his people. The chamber shook with the sound of staffs striking the floor in unison. The aliens chanted, their voices echoing through the tower. Daniel's head spun. He wanted to run, to hide, to wake up and find it was all a dream. But the reality was sharp and clear. There would be no escape. The guards pulled him aside, locking him in a small chamber lit by a single glowing crystal. He sat on the stone bench, his hands gripping his knees, his mind racing. He whispered into the empty room, What do I do now? If I fight, humans and aliens may go to war. If I accept, my life is no longer mine. Through the small window, he saw the two moons rising slowly, their pale light spilling across the alien city. The sound of distant drums began to echo in the streets, a rhythm of celebration. The forced tradition was no longer just words. It was real. It was happening. And Daniel was at its center. And with every beat of the drums, the moment of decision drew closer. Night fell across the alien city like a curtain of glowing silk. Two moons rose above the horizon, their light spilling over the towers and streets. The drums from the marketplace grew louder, joined by the hum of alien voices singing in deep harmony. For the natives, tonight was a celebration. For Daniel, it was a cage. He sat alone in a guarded chamber, his head resting in his hands. Every sound of music outside reminded him of what was coming, the ceremony of binding. His stomach twisted, his throat dry. He had not agreed, yet everyone acted as though he had. The door opened with a soft hiss and Elder Sira entered. She wore a flowing robe of silver and blue, marked with glowing threads that pulsed like starlight. To the aliens she looked regal, honored. To Daniel she looked kind, but also like a chain tied to his freedom. "Daniel," she said softly in the alien tongue, her voice trembling yet warm, "do not fear. Tonight you will not lose. You will gain a family. You will gain honor. You will never walk alone." Daniel stood, shaking his head. "Sira, you don't understand. In my world, marriage is chosen. Two people agree. They know each other. They want it. This is not my choice." Sira tilted her head, her silver eyes reflecting the crystal light. "Choice is a gift of the young. Tradition is the strength of the old. You may not see it now, but in time you will thank the path chosen for you." Her words were gentle, but to Daniel they felt like chains tightening around his chest. The guards knocked their staffs, signaling it was time. Daniel was led through long, glowing halls into the great square at the center of the city. Thousands of aliens gathered, their voices rising like waves. The air smelled of burning herbs and strange flowers. The veil of unity stretched across two tall pillars, glowing with the light of the moons. Humans stood at the edge of the square, their faces grim. Captain Harris was there, his jaw clenched, his fists tight. The humans were not cheering. They were watching with anger and disbelief. Daniel's heart pounded as he was brought forward. The High Seer raised his staff and the crowd fell silent. "Tonight," the Seer declared, his voice echoing through the square, "the human and Elder Sira will seal the vow. The union will be a bridge between worlds. Their bond will be our peace." The aliens cheered, throwing petals into the air. The humans stayed silent. Daniel stood frozen. He wanted to shout that it was wrong, that he never agreed, but every alien eye burned with expectation. Every human eye burned with hope that he would resist. He was trapped between two fires. Sira stepped forward beneath the glowing veil. She looked at him with a smile that carried both joy and sadness. "Come," she whispered. "Do not shame me before my people." Daniel's chest tightened. He had no anger toward her. She was kind, lonely, perhaps even wise, but he did not love her. He did not even know her. To him this was not destiny, it was prison. The High Seer gestured. "Step forward, human." Daniel's feet felt heavy as stone. He took one step, then another, until he stood beside Sira beneath the veil. The crowd hummed in low unison, the sound vibrating in his bones. The Seer began chanting words in the alien tongue. Attendants carried bowls of glowing water, sprinkling it over the veil. The moons above grew brighter as though watching. Daniel's thoughts spun wildly. If I go through with this, I lose my freedom. If I refuse, humans and aliens may turn on each other. He glanced at the human crowd. Harris's eyes locked with his, full of silent warning. Do not give in. Then he looked at the aliens. Their eyes shone with hope, as if one human's vow could heal centuries of mistrust.